This is the easier-to-read version of 1984 by George Orwell, retold and narrated by Sarah Simpson. Part 2, Chapter 7. Winston was asleep in bed with Julia. He woke up crying. He'd had a terrible nightmare. Parts of the nightmare were made up by his sleeping mind, but other parts were memories of things that had happened in the past. "What's wrong?" Julia asked sleepily. "I had a terrible dream," Winston said, "but it helped me realize something important. I thought my actions led to my mother's death, but now I can see that wasn't really what happened. Her death wasn't my fault." Julia was already going back to sleep. He wished she would stay awake and listen to him, but she always fell asleep when he was talking. As he lay there in bed, Winston remembered a combination of memories and dreams. Between the two things was the truth about what had happened to his mother. Winston was about 10 years old when his father left. He might have been forced into the army to fight in the war, or he might have just walked away. Winston's mother never said. It was the middle of the revolution and the fighting was terrible. Bombs and gunshots filled the air day and night. Winston, his mother, and his baby sister were all alone. Winston's mother became very depressed. She cleaned their tiny apartment, did their laundry, and cooked their meals, but she hardly ever talked. She knew how bad things were for herself and her 2 children, and she felt powerless to do anything about it. The thing that Winston remembered most was being hungry. He was always hungry. There was never enough food. He and his mother went through other people's trash, looking for rotten vegetables or stale pieces of bread to eat. They even followed the trucks that carried animal feed. If any of the feed spilled out on the bumpy part of the road, they swept it up and ate it. They all got thinner, but Winston's baby sister was the worst. She was sick with a cough, and without proper food she never got any better. Her tiny body looked like a skeleton. All his mother could do was hold her and rock her. His sister was so weak she barely even cried. Winston's hunger made him desperate. At mealtimes he would beg for more food. His mother always gave him the most, but it was never enough. He would yell and cry and beg and scream, but there was never enough to eat no matter what he did. His mother told him not to be greedy, but he was so hungry he didn't care. He knew that when he got more food, his mother and his baby sister got less, but he couldn't stop himself from eating the most. One day, his mother got a tiny 2-ounce square of chocolate. Winston knew the right thing to do would be to split it into 3 equal pieces, 1 for his mother, 1 for his sister, and 1 for him. But he was so desperate and hungry. He screamed at his mother that he should get the entire piece of chocolate. She told him not to be selfish. He didn't care. He kept begging and yelling until she gave 3/4 of the chocolate to him and 1/4 to his sister. But it still wasn't enough for Winston. He grabbed his sister's piece out of his mother's hand and ran away with it. He could see his sister's sad eyes and his mother's disappointment as he left. He knew his sister was dying, and he could take in this one small pleasure away from her. After he had eaten all the chocolate, Winston felt ashamed. He didn't want to go home. He walked around the streets until it got late, and he was so hungry that he needed to go home to get dinner. When he got to the apartment, his mother and sister were gone. All of their things were still in the apartment, but they weren't. Winston knew immediately that they were dead. Maybe his mother was taken to a work camp. Maybe his sister was taken to a children's home. Maybe they were both killed by soldiers right away. He would never know for sure. Winston tried to remember his mother. From what he could remember, she had been perfectly average. However, she had been a good person. She had been a loving person. She knew her children were starving, and she knew she couldn't save them. She gave them everything until she had nothing left, and then she gave them love. Even when there was nothing else, she gave them love. The party had taken that away from people. The only feeling allowed was hate. Love was not allowed. Love was dangerous to the party. If you loved someone, the party wasn't your first priority. If you loved someone, they would come first, before the party and before Big Brother. It was both incredibly smart and incredibly terrible at the same time. Without love, no one noticed or cared when someone disappeared. Without love, people didn't care if they died fighting in a war. They had no one to live for anyway. All normal human emotion had been taken away, so the party could manipulate them. Only the proles still had normal, loving relationships. Winston had always thought he was better than the proles. He thought they were stupid, but he had been wrong. The proles were the smart ones. They understood that caring for other people was the most important thing. He had been so stupid for not seeing it sooner. Julia was waking up. The proles are human beings. We are not human beings, Winston said. What are you talking about? Julia asked. He turned over to look her in the eyes. The smartest thing we could do would be to leave this room and agree to never see one another again, he said. I know, she said, but we're not going to do that. We haven't gotten caught yet, Winston said. We've been lucky, but we won't be lucky forever. We may get caught in a week or we may get caught in a year, but we will get caught. And when we are, they will do terrible things to us. I know that too, Julia said. When we get arrested, they'll keep us apart, he said. That will be the worst part, being alone. They'll torture us, and there will be nothing we can do to help one another. No matter what I say, they will shoot you. What will matter in the end is that we don't betray one another. Everybody confesses during torture, she said. You can't help it. I don't mean that, Winston said. It doesn't matter what words they make us say. What matters is how we feel about one another deep inside. They can't get inside my mind. They can't know what I feel. As long as we die knowing we love one another, the party won't win. We will still be human. Winston didn't know what they did to people inside the Ministry of Love. He knew that it was terrible and painful. There might be torture or drugs designed to make you talk. He knew he would talk. That part could not be avoided. Everyone talked. It was how they hoped they would be allowed to stay alive. But what if staying alive wasn't your goal? What if your goal was to remain a human being, even if that meant dying? They could kill your body. They could make you confess. But they couldn't take away the love you had inside your heart. And that was what really mattered.